Thanks very much. I'm going to invite Professor Juliet Gerard, the Prime Minister's Chief Science Advisor, to open the conference, open the symposium for us. Juliet, I don't think needs any introduction. She's an active researcher, so she's one of us. Juliet, please.
Tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Kia ora koutou katoa, kua hui hui mai nei, ki tēnei hui, ki te kōrero, i ngā kaupapa o te wā. Ka nui te hari, ka nui te koa, i tō koutou kai nā kao, ki te kōrero, ki te ako, ki te tautoko, i ngā kaupapa. Nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa. And thank you very much. That was the best introduction I have had all year, Kevin. I'm glad I'm still one of us. It's actually exactly 1 year today since I took the role. So when I looked at my phone this morning, I realized that's why I'm so tired. And I'm getting the hang of it. So I looked at what I had to do today, and I went to the breakfast this morning, and then I had to come straight here, and a little alarm went off in my head saying, you might not get breakfast, so I ordered porridge. So I feel like I've got the job nailed now. So I've spent a large part of the past year going around the country and listening to views on all the priority areas where science, and that's New Zealand science, defined in its very broadest sense to cover social science, kaupapa Māori, you name it, justice even, can make a difference to government policy in Aotearoa New Zealand. And so I've had many forums with researchers across all disciplines and lots of meetings with policymakers and politicians. And one thing that was dotted through very many of those meetings was food. It dotted actually across so many domains that it didn't kind of synthesize into one topic, but it certainly featured very heavily as I tried to organize all the thoughts that I'd been given as I traveled around the country. We've only got a small office, and I hired a whole new team, and happily they've enthusiastically embraced the full principles with which I set out last year to try and shape what we did: inclusion, rigor, transparency, and accessible. And those latter two principles have very much been channeled into our web presence and social media. So if you'd like to see what we're doing, all the ideas that came up, and the sorts of things that I've been discussing with the Prime Minister about what we should work on, where research evidence-based can really make a difference to policy, you can go and have a look online, and it's all there. Our major project for the year has been rethinking our relationship with plastic, and that's ongoing. It was an area of huge interest from researchers across all disciplines, and it's also very much in the mind of the New Zealand general public. So some of you may have seen the Colmar Brunton Better Futures poll that came out last year, and it's the top concern of New Zealanders, according to that poll, in the environmental and social space. Interesting day to be chatting about that too, because today's the first day of the single-use plastic bag ban, so that's when it becomes policy. And that's just a first step of what the government's trying to do. And we were looking for a topic where there was lots of energy from the public and researchers, where there was an active policy agenda, so the evidence base was welcome. So we'll be working alongside Minister Sage's office and MFE, delivering the evidence base as we go, and put a big report out at the end of the year. On my travels, I've also had a lot of feedback from the community about ways we could improve how we actually do our science, and in particular a desire to reduce competition and provide more stable career structures. I'd be really interested to know if that's the case in food science and safety too. I'm not picking up nodding. It's a big thing in health, so it'd be great to chat about that later at the panel maybe. I would have thought that in this area, institutional knowledge would be particularly important, so be interested to learn about career structures in food science and safety. I think in general that lack of security breeds something of a competitive future for scientists and makes them more likely to focus on individual careers and less likely to collaborate, which is hard in areas like this, so I'm glad there weren't too many people nodding. I think all too often that search for funds and grants and the obsession with granting rounds and funding rounds gives us a bit of a bad look in parts of government, and I'm sure the MB people in here might nod. There's a certain amount of don't fund them, fund us that comes through in some parts of government. And so when I talk to politicians and say, this is what the scientists say, I have to cut through that, oh, but they just want the money. And so that's something I think we could do as a whole science community to try and present ourselves better. So it's not them or us, but we all try and help the whole research development pie grow. So we need research in big companies like Fonterra and Zespri, and we also need to nurture small startups like Rocket Labs. Look what's happened there. And we need fundamental science and translational science. It needn't be an either-or conversation. And similarly, we need impact and we need excellence in no particular order. We need both. So I don't think those are useful debates to have. Better to just talk about how we all need all of that. I actually think this bickering over money causes some deeper problems with society because it undermines public trust in science more generally. And we could do better if we talked about resources we need to do the job we do, rather than give the impression that we're greedily grabbing money for a trip to Spain or something, which is what sometimes I feel when I talk to the public about needing resource for science. I think it's really important to do that not just in the main cities, but the regions. So when I've gone out and visited regional centres, I've really noticed how in those communities having science present really ups the level of engagement with science with the public. And in those communities, scientific thinking can tend to be underrepresented and people can turn to alternate views. And so getting out to the regions as a science community, I think is really important. I raise these points because I think that food science and food safety is at the pointy end of some of the issues that face us going forward, and arguably nowhere is the public more connected to our science or opposed to our science than around food. And the Royal Society genetic editing report is about to land, and that debate's going to rev up again, I think. More specifically, my office is going to intersect with some of the research in the food safety space in particular as our Rethinking Plastics develops throughout the year. And that project's really broad in scope. It goes all the way from doing an audit of the plastics going in and out to how we might change behaviour to where it's a good use of plastics and where the food safety angle is going to really play out. So the last thing we want is to jeopardise food safety, but we do need to move to a more sustainable society. It's a very open panel process, and I'm really keen to hear from anyone who has views in that space, and I'm looking forward to the panel tonight. So I'm going to have to do that thing that people with jobs like mine do and duck out of this session straight after I've talked, which I hate doing, I'm sorry, because it looks like a great programme and I would really have liked to stay, but I am looking forward to coming back for the last panel of the evening. So I won't take up any more of your time and instead wish you all the best for a successful symposium. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Juliet. And just to say thank you also for your work with opening up the breakfast session this morning as well. I really appreciate that, and we look forward to seeing you later on today. So for those of you who don't know me, my name's Nigel French. I'm the Director of the Food Safety Centre, and I'd like to welcome you all to this third annual symposium. There's just a couple of housekeeping things I need to say at the beginning. First of all, the toilets, for people who want them, are you go out the back and you turn right after about 20 yards or whatever, and turn right. The second thing is around the fire exits. So you can see the fire exits just on the two sides here. So if there is a fire, that's where you make your way out. And also, obviously, in the case of an earthquake, drop, cover, hold under the table is the appropriate thing to do. Just one other thing as well is for those who are speaking, please could you make sure you get your mics mic'd up 10 minutes before you speak. Okay? So I'd just like to start by just an overall of the overview of the programme. We can see it. So I think it's a really exciting day we've got today, and I'd really like to thank our international speakers, Gail Princeton, who's here, Martin Kirk, and Alison Turnbull. who will be coming over, and also to thank Anne Aston, who's come over from Australia, also to take part in our panel session this afternoon. We've got 2 sessions on whole genome sequencing. We have a panel discussion, and then we have emerging risks and opportunities session this afternoon, and then obviously followed this evening after drinks with the session with Kim Hill, which I'm hoping most of you can go. I think it'll be a really exciting session. And I'd just like to say thanks to Tim Harwood, the Deputy Director, working with the SLT to put this programme together for today. So what have we achieved over the last year? I think it's been a fantastic year. I think we can safely say now, and I feel confident in saying this, that the centre really has become a focal point for food safety research in New Zealand. One of the things that's been most exciting for me is to see the collaboration between the researchers from the research partners, particularly those that are represented in the science leadership team. It's been fantastic working with that group of people over the last year, and I think we've really achieved a huge amount. A lot of the projects that we do are highly collaborative, working with government and with industry, and I think we are beginning to get this international recognition that we wanted to and set out to do right at the start. We've also, this is part of our outreach and engagement as well, and you can see the consumed new magazine on the right-hand side there. There's a lot of activities that we do in this area, which I think is really important for raising the profile of the centre, but also for giving out important food safety messages to the general public. We've had really good success recently with industry engagement and investment in the centre too. We have 19 projects now, which are, I think 17 or 8 of them co-funded by industry, which have been recently initiated or about to start in some really exciting areas. And we also have 13 projects that have been completed today, and you can read about some of these on our website. We're really pleased to see that the poultry industry, we now have a programme of research which has been signed off and underway, and looking forward to the poultry industry really joining the centre. And we're really hopeful that we can finish some work that we're doing in bringing seafood safety into the centre as well. And I think we can see some really excellent science and some really good outputs already from the centre just after this initial 3 years. And I'd just like to focus a bit on the PhD students and just to congratulate them. They're already beginning to publish and produce some really impressive outputs in some top journals as well. So this is 5 publications that have been produced by our PhD students. And we have, for those of you who use Google Scholar, we actually have a Food Safety Centre website. There's over 30 publications on that now, and you can see the number of citations that are increasing over time. So it's a really good sign to see that kind of output from the centre. So we have a number of projects underway, as I mentioned, and the focus of the programme today is a bit more about showcasing some of the work that's been done by the centre over the last year. The previous symposiums, it was too early to start talking in real earnest about the work that's underway, but today we'll focus more on those. And you can see projects on STEC, on genomics, on listeria, diagnostics, the Campylobacter one in poultry about to start, and mentioning there the students, the New Zealand-China Food Protection Network. We're not going to be talking about much today, but it's been very successful, and our work on wild food harvesting with the Maori community. We also have some small-scale seed funding projects in a number of areas as well, and we hope that these will also lead to further engagement with industry and attraction of industry funding for more significant programs in those kinds of areas that are mentioned up there. So that's all from me for now. I'd just like to say a huge thank you. So these are all the people that I'd like to say a special thank you to. I'm not going to mention everyone individually, but just to say that there's a lot of people involved in the centre, obviously. This is my last month as director of the centre, as many of you will know, so I will be leaving the centre in this role from the 31st of July. I'd like to say a huge thank you to these 2 individuals, particularly here, to Wendy Newport-Smith and to Michael Dunn. We've shared an office for the last 3 years, or a cupboard as we call it, and it's been really fantastic working with them. I couldn't praise them more highly. It's been an absolute privilege. So just to say thank you to them, and particularly to them for their help with organising this session today. So I'd like to hand over now to Dr. Kevin Marshall, Chair of the Governance Board.